Today we are going to talk about Chapter 3. Now, Chapter 3 is an important topic. It is about managing your speech anxiety. First thing I want to tell you is that if you are nervous about delivering a speech, you are not the only one. It is considered to be among the top three fears in America, consistently across a number of polls that they have taken. The top three fears are always of death, of public speaking, and of heights. Those are the top three fears. And surprisingly enough, public speaking ranks number one over death in some studies. So some people even fear public speaking more than death. I think that's pretty amazing. So understand that you're not by yourself. But there are things that you can do to manage your speech anxiety. Be, even the most motivational and practiced and very polished and professional speakers get nervous. But the key is that they learn how to make their anxiety work for them instead of against them. So that's what we're going to talk about in chapter 3. Since everybody's going to have this fear and this nervousness, get those little butterflies in your stomach, how do you make that work for you as opposed to against you? Well, the first thing I would say is that you need to figure out what it is about public speaking that makes you nervous in the first place. Is it because you've never done it before and you don't know what to expect? Or is it because you have done it before and perhaps had a bad experience or a bad reaction? It also could be because you're not used to being in the front. You're not used to having, everybody's eyes on you and, you being the center of attention. It also could be because you feel that people will focus on any little idiosyncrasies that you may have. Maybe you speak with your hands, or maybe you have a slight stutter, or maybe you think that you'll forget something and blank out for a moment. Understand that these things happen to everyone, and it is okay, especially since audiences really don't know what's going on with you unless you tell them. Keep that in mind. They don't see the butterflies in your stomach. They don't hear your heart beating fast in your chest. They can't see that you're sweating under there unless you show it to them. Okay? So just don't tell them. You sometimes have to almost fake it until you can really get comfortable being in the front. All right. So now that you've figured out what makes you nervous, think about when it hits you. Do you have what we call pre-preparation anxiety where, just from the minute you heard you had to take this class, you started getting nervous? That would be pre-preparation anxiety. Or you might have, preparation anxiety where as you're preparing for the speech and you're trying to research it, that's when you start to get nervous. You could also have pre-performance anxiety as you're getting ready and you're practicing it. Then that's when that fear hits you. And lastly, you could have performance anxiety. And performance anxiety is where most of us fall. And that is, we're okay the whole way in the preparation. But then when, we walk into that room and we see the audience and it, kind of hits us and becomes real, then we sort of get that anxiety and we get those little butterflies that I was talking about earlier. So, that's usually when the anxiety is the highest. It's at that preparation, at the performance time, okay? And that's just typical, so you shouldn't feel alone. That is sort of what happens. All right, now let's look at, now we know why we get nervous. We know when we get nervous. Now, how do we manage that anxiety? What are some tips? Now, there are a lot of tips that Chapter 3 will give you, and it depends on who you are, which tip will work best for you. So I strongly encourage you to read through Chapter 3, but I will briefly highlight a few of the techniques. First of all, and I think the most important one is, you have to prepare adequately in practice. This may seem so elementary and fundamental, But honestly, if you have gone over your material a number of times, and if you know the content well enough, you won't fear forgetting, and you won't fear, how the audit, if you stumble over your words, because you will have practiced it and you know it, and that will make you feel so much more confident. If you're throwing something together at the last minute, then it kind of stands to reason that you are going to be anxious because you really are not confident in what you're presenting. So, this first tip is obviously prepare and practice. Most people that prepare adequately, that will take care of 70 to 80% of the fear. Okay? But if it's still there after you've practiced and gone over it and over it, then another thing you can do is sort of try to modify your thoughts and attitudes. A lot of times we're our own worst enemies. We're telling ourselves we're not good at it, or we're telling ourselves that we're going to forget information. Well, if you keep telling yourself that, you will believe yourself. You believe yourself. Keep that in mind. So you have to start giving yourself positive messages. You have to, look at yourself and say, I can do it. You have to tell yourself, and then you'll start to believe it. All right? Another thing is that helps people is that they can meditate or do deep breathing. Now, a simple test for deep breathing is to put your hand on your stomach. And when you put your hand on your stomach, when you take a deep breath in, your stomach should go out, and then it will go back in. So when you breathe in, your stomach goes out. And when you breathe out, your stomach should go in. It should always be an opposite effect. If you're not breathing from a deep place, from your diaphragm, and you're doing like you're working out, and your shoulders are going, that's not going to help to calm you down. But if you breathe correctly, if you do deep breathing, 3 deep breaths, forces your heart rate to drop, which, think about it, when you get nervous, your heart goes pitter patter, pitter patter. That will help your heart rate to drop. That also helps the butterflies to go away. Okay? And the last tip that I'll highlight is visualization. Picture yourself in your mind going through the presentation day. Picture yourself doing a good job. Picture what the audience is doing. If you've ever seen the movie Waterboy, it's an example I like to use. The water boy, he was just, someone who was always picked on, and now he finally had a chance to play football. And the coach tells him, look at the player that you're about to tackle, and think about all those people that made fun of you. And so instead of seeing that face that was in front of him, he would visualize the person that had made fun of him. And all of a sudden, all that aggression would come out, and he would charge toward the person. Think along those lines. You want to picture exactly what's going to happen on that day. Now, chapter 3 will go through a number of other tips. I've just highlighted a few of them for you, but understand the main message is that you are not alone. Everybody has a fear, but the best thing to do with a fear is to face it.